After applicants have presented his or her request and the board has had time to ask questions and discuss the project, we will accept questions from the audience. Because this is a public meeting, it is required by law that you give your name and address first. Although we may disagree on the issues raised, all persons present during this meeting are expected to be civil to all other meeting attendees. This includes the members of the commission, staff, abutters, concerned citizens, property owners, and project applicants. We also request that you confine your questions to the project and only as it pertains to the Wetlands Act. We cannot handle, nor do we have jurisdiction regarding such things as noise or traffic. All problems not related to the Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Danvers Wetlands Protection Bylaw must be taken up with the other appropriate boards. As we move forward into our agenda, the first item will be a roll call. Peter Wilson is present. Vanessa Curran.
Here.
Chelsea King.
Here.
Ann McGill.
Here.
And Michael Splain.
Yeah.
Good. Welcome, everybody. First item on our agenda is a continued public hearing for 160 Andover Street, DEP file number 14-13, and they do not have a DEP number. And as a result, they have requested that we continue their hearing until our next meeting, right? February 24th. So if there's no comment, I'd entertain a motion to continue on to February 24th.
I'll make a motion that we can continue the notice of intent without the DEP file number 14-13 blank, 160 Andover Street, applicant PMG Northeast, continue till February 24th meeting.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next up is notice of intent for 69 North Street, the subdivision roadway, DEP file number 14-1370. The applicant is John Hernandez, and you are? I don't
No.
think-
Not sure if that's... You're a bit quiet. Hold on. I don't think that's on. Sorry
Technical
about that.
difficulties.
There we go. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, members of the commission. My name is Thor Akerley. I'm a wetland scientist and registered sanitarian with the engineering office of Williams and Sparages. Tonight representing John Hernandez, the applicant for the 69 North Street subdivision project. So I know the last time we were before the commission, I believe Chris Sparages was here, and I know we've gone through a number of meetings here, but I'll just quickly, I guess, before I do that, kind of just dive into what the project is. We have a small jurisdictional bordering vegetated wetland on the northern side of the subject property, highlighted in green there. You can see the 25-foot no disturb, 50-foot no build zone highlighted, as well as the 100-foot buffer zone, and limit of work in pink. Within the buffer zone, the applicant is proposing a portion of the subdivision roadway, the associated stormwater management areas, and of course, associated grading with that, with the roadway. So last time Chris was before you, he had, I know we've kind of beaten this up pretty good, but I know last time Chris was here before you, he had explained the major change to the plan, which was changing the primary stormwater attenuation device from a subsurface Coltec chamber system previously, which was partially within the US's easement for their stormwater system, which also runs through that area. That had gone through different agencies in town, and the town decided that they would rather have a surface infiltration basin instead of a subsurface system. So the stormwater management, the stormwater report and design of the whole stormwater management system was revised to be a surface infiltration basin. So this would just be a grassed area that would attenuate the stormwater for the roadway. Aside from that, that was the only change within the buffer zone. There was no change to the roadway or any of the grading along the roadway or driveway to Lot 5 there you see on the right. And at this time, the planning board has endorsed the subdivision. They've signed the Mylars. Chris and the engineering team has responded to comments from the town engineer, and he has signed off on the project as well. The project complies with the 10 standards of the stormwater management regulations, despite that recent change. Again, we don't have any comments from DEP still, which is not surprising because we had filed, I think, 3 or 4 months ago. But aside from that, I believe I've covered everything. I believe, I guess most importantly, aside from the Wetlands Protection Act, we believe the project complies with the Danvers wetlands bylaw. There is no activity proposed within the no disturb zone, and there are no structures proposed within the no build zone either. Thank you.
Just one quick question, then I'll pass it along to the other members of the board. The riprap wall just on the rotary is just outside of the 35 no disturb, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then part of the infiltration system is within our 100-foot jurisdiction?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, let me pass it along to members of the board to see what questions they might have. Go ahead, Mike, do you have any questions,
Well,
comments?
just on you changed the system because of the easement, the US easement. So what's the new system going to look like?
So I'm not sure, you might have seen other surface areas. They're basically, in subdivisions, you'll see as they get older, they get filled with phragmites or cattail, but there'll be basins off the side of roadways that sort of look like wetlands. This might not be one that turns into that because I remember we had well-drained soils here.
It'll be open though, right?
Yes, it's an open area. It's proposed to be all grassed, and it would just be a raised basin. Stormwater would flow into it through a riprap. I'll take this.
How much water will that handle?
I wish I could answer that for you accurately. What I can tell you is that the project is designed to meet the stormwater management regulations, which means that there's no increase in peak flow runoff from the activities associated with the roadway. So basically, there's no additional runoff caused by.
No, I think before they were maintaining it would be a slight improvement. So is this not quite as good as the other system or about?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, personally, I can't speak to that necessarily. I suppose their function is exactly the same, though. They're meant to absorb and handle all of the stormwater for the impervious surfaces in the subdivision. So, for all intents and purposes, they're equivalent. I know some people prefer subsurface chambers. If you're a neighbor in that subdivision, you might prefer not to see a slightly raised basin. But for all intents and purposes, these are actually much easier to maintain.
Right.
Everything's at the surface.
I like them better. Now, is it just, if I could just ask staff, now, is this under the review of Stephen King, or is this something we just concerned that it meets the standards and it's really reviewed by Stephen King, isn't it?
Exactly. So ensuring that it meets the standards is done by Steve King and his engineering expertise and reading those calculations. And when we get those comments back that say no more concerns, all issues have been alleviated, then the board knows the 12 stormwater standards have been met. And then when you issue the order of conditions, you're also acknowledging, yes, it's subject to the stormwater standards, and yes, it has met them.
And we can require the maintenance of it, though.
And that, again, is something that falls under the stormwater management permit, and then it would be a boilerplate under the order.
Under our order.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Georgia. All right, I'm satisfied. No
Okay,
questions. No further questions.
You all set, Mike?
Yes, thank you.
Chelsea?
That actually addressed the question I had, which was like you mentioned, these older basins get overgrown, who is gonna be maintaining this, if anyone?
Yeah, so the subdivision as a whole would be responsible for the maintenance of the,
Is that correct? Or is that,
So if the town does accept the roadway and the intention is for the roadway to become public, then the town would
the
be.
town would,
right,
Yes.
and that was part of the issue with the subsurface chambers, I believe, that the town would be responsible for maintaining something that was a part, I believe we did move it out of the easement, but it's just more difficult to deal with if you have issues than something like this, where as long as it's cleaned of sediment on a semi-regular basis, you won't have the clogging and ponding of water in there.
is it initially going to be maintained by the subdivision? I mean, is there some
Yeah,
sort
so-
of agreement to that?
It's depending on, sometimes subdivision work, they have the detention basins built first and they're used during construction, in which, of course, the developer would maintain throughout construction.
Not the homeowners, but the developer?
Yeah, if the road, yeah. Should it become a homeowners association,
Yeah.
then there would be an agreement
different.
there. But it sounds like this roadway would become public if the town does accept it at town meeting.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Chelsea?
Yeah, just to be clear, so like, that's all boilerplate stuff for stormwater, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to add that as like a special condition?
Exactly. yeah.
Okay, excellent, yeah, that's all my questions.
Okay, Ann,
Same question.
any questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Vanessa?
Were test pits dug in this area to determine the infiltration capacity of the soils and how much water it can handle?
Yeah, that's a great question. So these 3 test pits were dug about a year ago. I was the one actually out there. So we determined the texture of the soil, which is how they design the stormwater capacity of this basin, and also the seasonally high groundwater table. So that basin will be, I believe it has to be 2 feet above the seasonally high groundwater table. And that just ensures that the water's treated before it reaches the groundwater table.
Thank you. And what steps are in place to make sure that it's built to the specifications? I'm just thinking of another subdivision we had in town that was supposed to have an above-ground detention basin that has water in it 2 to 3 weeks after
Yeah.
it's rained. So I'm just trying to avoid that happening again.
Yeah, that's another good question. It's something that you'll, as a commission and Georgia, have jurisdiction over during construction. And for a larger project, it's like this, it's reasonable to check up on it periodically. And most issues during construction would cause those problems. You wouldn't typically have issues happen, over time you would if it wasn't maintained, but the larger issues with construction or, sediment getting in there while they're, really working out there, constructing the road, that's when you can have problems early on that could lead to initial problems with it. So I suppose, the commission in Georgia have the right to, of course, be out there, during portions of the construction of the stormwater management area to make sure that they're, following a good protocol to ensure there's not sediment getting in there and they're taking care of it.
Thank you. And just one more question. You mentioned that a lot of times these things fill in with Phragmites, and you're saying it's designed to be grass. Is it just basically assumed that eventually over time it will get infested with Phragmites?
Well, if it's mowed by the town, it shouldn't grow anything necessarily.
Okay.
And I don't want to say that it will definitely be infested with Phragmites. There's probably not a lot around here, to be honest. Usually you wouldn't find it, or I didn't see any when I was out there. But, with invasives, you just never know where and when they'll pop up. But as long as it's mowed, it would stay, grass, or you'd have little sprouts of it that would just need to be cut every so often. But typically they're supposed to be mowed.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Go ahead. One
I'm
second,
all-
Mike.
That
You
was
all
feel
it.
set?
done.
I'm all set.
Vanessa?
Thanks.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. Ideally, with these systems, when there's not a stormwater issue going on, should there be any water in them, or should they be dry?
There shouldn't be any water in them. I believe the the policy or regulations say that it's supposed to drop to an inch or less, or there's not supposed to be any standing water in it within 48 hours of a rain event.
And I think that's what Vanessa was getting at.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that would be something we would be concerned with going forward till it's complete, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and like I said, especially early on when you could have issues, you know, related to construction that could impact this, you know, it's important to keep an eye on it. It's important that it's built, you know, as it's designed. And of course, when they go for their certificate of compliance, there'll be inspections done by your staff to ensure that it, you know, it was built correctly, and you're, you know, of course, able to keep an eye on it during construction as well.
Thank you.
Just one final question. Any idea what the construction timeline is? You know, when these roadways are under construction, the catch basins they put the cloth in, whatever you call it, and that tends to affect how everything drains. So we'd want to minimize the construction time. So do you have any idea how long the plan is?
I don't exactly. For something like this, it's usually, for everything to be done, it's probably close to 2 years or so. I would think a year and a half, 2 years is my best guess. But those catch basins, those would all be protected with silt sacks during construction. And, you know, once that roadway is paved, you know, that would limit erosion. But again, that, you know, there are periods of time where the road is open, soil's exposed, and that's likely part of the stormwater bylaw for the town. And I know this is a project that would be regulated under the EPA's stormwater pollution prevention program, and that's, you know, a pretty serious coverage, and that requires you to submit a plan showing all of the protections on catch basins on the project, near the project, as well as erosion controls. And we've actually had a few projects where the EPA's come out and actually said, you know, are you guys actually following the program that you're supposed to?
So that has been done.
So that's usually done like right before they start. That's not typically done this early in the process, because it's all this information. It's just we really just show them that there's silt sacks on the catch basin, the storm, and then we kind of reiterate the maintenance of the basin, erosion controls, and there's inspection forms to make sure those items are maintained.
Okay, you just understand that we want to get this done as quickly as we can. And Georgia, the staff is all on board with inspection during construction?
Absolutely, and as Thor had mentioned, the SWIP reports under the EPA requirements, those do come in, and then with the minor stormwater, the town stormwater permit, there's inspection requirements there, and then just the DEP, there's check-ins there for stormwater stuff, and it's also triggered after rain events. So
Okay.
with all our subdivisions, we get a lot of check-ins and weekly reports.
Okay. And everything signed off with the planning board and
Correct.
with the stormwater. Okay, are there any questions from the public? Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matthew Duggan. I just wanted to point out that it was only at the last meeting that the applicant attended where the initial stormwater containment system was changed to this surface one. The previous system was a subterranean Storm Tech 3500, which is a design that's often used for this type of location. It's subterranean. There's a number of large baffles with a lot of riprap that is designed to store the water and allow it to sink into the ground. So now that it's exposed, it seems less complicated, but the impact is greater. And we've seen other examples where these retention ponds are not constructed correctly, and they retain the water over a long period of time, weeks at a time, and they become mosquito breeding grounds that impact the residents that live in close proximity. So when people when I hear that the water's gonna be an inch or less after 48 hours, I'm highly skeptical of that. We know that there's a homeowner that lives adjacent to this property at 9 Pentucket, the Mullins family, and this water goes through their property. So if there was a significant increase in flow, that would be detrimental not only to their yard, but also they have a swimming pool that could be undermined by the increased flow. I want to talk about the ownership. So it's presumptuous to assume that the town meeting will accept the roadway quickly. We know that some roadways haven't been accepted and they've existed for dozens of years. And town meeting members from conversations that I've had with several of them, they become kind of less willing to accept this because of the liability that may exist. When the town accepts the roadway, they also accept the liability that comes along with it and the expense. And so I think expecting the developer to maintain those catch basins and to maintain this retention pond, we know from Sandpiper and from Carroll Way that that's not actually what happens. We see the retention drains, we see them with, plants growing out of them. And so that means the residents are going to have to assume at least responsibility for some period of time until the town actually buys into this. So I don't know what the requirement is to create an HOA, a homeowners association, to have them accept the maintenance of this for some period of time. It could be a year or two, or it could be a decade, we don't know. And so I don't know if that's under your purview, that someone needs to take responsibility, and just to dump it off on the town, I think, is kind of not really fair.
Haven't we established that the developer is going to
The
maintain-
developer for, right, are you talking about this development?
this
Yeah,
development?
this specific retention system, we heard the applicant's representative say it needed to be mowed to keep the invasive species out. We know there's invasive species right in that, within that like 25 no build. We know that there's invasive species there, so they were very easy to migrate into this
Yeah.
pond.
And that if the roadway is accepted by the town and it goes to town meeting, then DPW would mow it.
Yes, and I'm
Yeah.
saying that's presumptuous because we don't know how long that could be. So in the interim, could be a period of years, who's going to take care of this system?
Before the roadway's accepted, at that time, the developer holds control. So like right now, for example, Whipple Hill has not been accepted. The developer holds control and maintenance of the roadways and the detention basins until
Alright.
they are accepted.
All right, well, that looks good on paper, but in practice, it doesn't always work that way. So I would ask the
It works at
commission
Holly
to
Hill. I
somehow,
know the developer at Holly Hill kept good maintenance of the stormwater systems over
George,
there.
is that the kind of thing we would have them post a performance bond for if the
The planning
developer's
board does. So the planning board right now
I don't
holds
think it's
a
within our jurisdiction.
hefty bond for Whipple Hill.
So they,
Yeah, it's,
and same for this.
yeah, and those performance guarantees aren't released until checks and balances are assumed. So we wouldn't release the performance guarantee or suggest acceptance of a roadway if the detention basins aren't up to standard.
But we wouldn't make them post a bond here.
No, the commission could have them hold an individual bond for a specific item, if it was mitigation or, some certain plantings. Because the bond you would want to hold on that would be pretty hefty, which is something that would fall under the subdivision with the planning board.
So there is a bond posted, but was imposed by the planning?
Yeah, the performance guarantee for subdivisions are posted with the planning board. If the Conservation Commission, for some reason, wanted to hold a bond on something specific, not the whole project, they technically could, as you guys require for 160 Andover for their
So I
planting.
think I'm not saying we do it here,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think we could
And the bond would
force them to
cover,
post a bond until it was turned over till the roadway was turned over, so that they ensure the developer continues to maintain the detention system?
So I would suggest on that, having the bond only for the portion that's applicable to the Conservation Commission, which is going to be, I'm not sure if it's the whole entire system, and it's
No,
a small, tiny portion of the roadway here. So,
And
the-
a bit of the retention pond too. But, there's already a bond, unless I'm mistaken.
yeah,
there's
I mean,
already a
there
bond
are, there's
posted
many
by-
checks and balances to make sure that you can't just walk away from, you know,
Yeah.
an unfinished project or an unmaintained
Okay,
piece. And
but
if
who's
it-
gonna check up on this? Because I know, there's a Carroll Way or one of them where the pipe is too
Oh, believe me,
high.
the Carroll Way, that's discussed constantly in the office, and it's not something where we're just letting it go. It's a two-party effort in which we're waiting for the other party to make moves
Yeah,
on
but
their.
we're the ones that are bringing them in to discuss that. So if this wasn't draining properly, would
And
we
they
be
weren't
bringing
doing
them in?
anything, we can take that, the town can take that performance guarantee and use that money to hire someone to maintain it. If it really gets to the point where they're not coming in, they're not doing anything, we're not hearing from them, we're gonna use that money to actually get it done. And our own DPW will start doing it, and then we charge the developer for the work that we did to clean out your catch basins. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
eventually, we get to a point where we are holding them accountable, but there are checks and balances in
Steps.
30-day periods that you have to wait.
Thank you.
Right. And just in closing, so I think the residents are looking to the commission to maintain some type of control over this, to ensure that it's constructed and maintained the way that we're being told. Because if you depend on someone else, another group or another board to do that, it's possible that it'll just fall through the cracks. So I know the commission takes this seriously with other projects, and so I think that the residents are looking to you to kind of perform that type of oversight.
Yeah, but Matt, I don't think we do HOAs anymore, do we?
I mean, they are done, and it's really up to we
think
do
this
also have our cluster development option, but people don't take advantage of that, so they're out there. We just haven't had one recently.
No.
This is also stormwater again. This is not necessarily under our
Yeah,
jurisdiction.
I understand that, but it has an impact downstream, and we've talked about that before, about the water from this system, where it goes after it leaves this. I think it's still within your purview.
And I've said before, Matt, the same amount of water that falls out of the sky is gonna go down through that same wetland system.
Well, I think there's gonna be a lot more water, right? So we've
Where's
channeled
it coming
it.
from? I mean,
It's coming from the roadway and from the
that
impervious
water's already,
surfaces.
it's already falling now, Matt,
Yeah, but it's diversified and it's spread out.
into people's yards, and that was what their initial complaint was. And
Yep.
this,
All right, well, I hope that's true. I hope that this system doesn't have a negative impact on the residents that bought this property. Thank you.
thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I think we've talked about this long enough, so if someone could make a motion to close the public hearing, we'll proceed from there.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for DEP file number 14-1370, 69 North Street subdivision roadway.
Can motion be made to close the public hearing? Is there a second?
Second motion.
Did we check to see if there was anyone out there on,
There's no one online
one
tonight.
online.
no one?
No.
Okay.
Interwebs are empty.
Okay, so the motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Aye. And there are no waivers required here, correct? Okay, so now is the time to make a motion to grant an order of conditions. So if someone can make a motion, if there's any specific extra conditions you'd like to add, now would be the time.
I'd make a motion that we issue an order of conditions on the notice of intent for 69 North Street, DEP file number 14-137, what is that,
7-0.
1370, applicant John Hernandez, with the standard conditions, and would ask that I still would like a condition, I know it's stormwater, but can we add a condition that they report back on the issue of the detention?
What do you mean?
We
Well, there's
report
no
back on
issue
what-
now, so.
Is when it's, when it's complete.
Say that one more time. I just don't understand what the
Well,
product we would get. Do
we
you want
spent-
inspection
We spent
reports?
30 minutes talking about this detention pond, so, I know it's stormwater, but it must be important, we spent a lot of time on it. Do we want to be able to monitor it, or do we leave that to Steve King?
I mean, we do monitor it. Reports will be given on the status of it, when it's constructed, how it's operating, with every SWIP report and stormwater inspection, the minute it's built.
Will we hear about it again through staff, or?
Yeah, and if the commission wants to condition that quarterly updates should be provided on the detention basin the minute it's constructed, I think that's.
I'd be all right with that, quarterly updates, yes.
And I-
Just state
Just
that
to
as part of
keep
your
it,
motion.
sort
then.
of keep us abreast of it.
So just state that as part of your motion. then.
Yeah, I am. That we receive quarterly reports on the
Engineering,
ongoing
on the engineering status of the detention
status of the
basin.
detention pond.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, the motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you all. It's been nice working with you.
Thank you.
Take
Thor.
care.
Same here.
Next is a request for determination of applicability, 24 to 42 Cherry Hill Drive. The DCC file number is 22-01. The applicant is Abiomed. The applicant has requested to continue to our 224 meeting, and I see no one here to give us any updates on that, so I think if we can just make a motion to continue, and we'll go from there.
I'll make a motion, we continue the RDA for 2442 Cherry Hill Drive, DCC file number 22-01, applicant Abiomed, Inc., to our next scheduled meeting of 2/24/22.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second the motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next up, notice of intent for 51 and 55 Pickering Street, DEP file number 14-1374. The applicant is Decam Construction Corp. The applicant has requested to continue to our 224 meeting as well. So if someone can make a motion, we'll continue that hearing.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing for the notice of intent for 51-55 Pickering Street, DEP file number 14-1374 to our next meeting on February 24th.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second the motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's it for agenda items. Next is old and new business. We see here we have a violation discussion for Beaver Brook Roadway, the DEP file number 14-1330. I see that John Colantoni is here representing the applicant. And before you speak, I just would like to ask Georgia to just give us a bit of a background on the complaint that we have in front of us.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. So I'm just going to keep it very technical and straightforward. Sean Chamberlain is our field tech in the office, and he goes out to do inspections. So the issue was first noted on December 16th, and it sounds like Sean had a verbal discussion with John on site or someone on site around December 21st, and let him know the roadway was getting dirty and the silt sacks were getting clogged. On December 29th, the silt sacks were cleaned, and they did note there was a large backfill pile of fill that was not protected by erosion control. Nothing was done, so January 11th, the roadway is still messy, and the stockpile had not been protected by erosion control. A week later, Sean had another discussion asking you guys to clean up the roadway. The backfill pile still was not protected. And then January 26th is when we sent our first violation notice. Didn't hear anything back. By February 1st, the issue is still not resolved. On the 3rd, we sent you a second violation notice, no response. And then February 9th, yesterday, the issue's still not resolved. So it looked like the street hadn't been swept and the big pile of fill was still not protected. So I think what we're looking for here is just a simple clean of the street and protection of the stockpile. And we're all set.
Is it all right if I speak to?
Just one second, please, John. Just before we get to John, does anyone have any questions for what Georgia just told us?
I don't.
Nobody?
No.
Chelsea?
No.
No? Okay. All right, John, go ahead.
So, John Colantoni for the record. So, first of all, thank you for having us. Unfortunately, called in for a situation like this. We're about in our 18th month of the project, and we appreciate the help of the Planning Department and Conservation. And we have Scott Cameron's office, our engineer. They do what's the technical term, Georgia? The SW?
The SWIP reports and the
SWIP report.
stormwater
So it's really a team effort on a project like this, which is very helpful to keep everything the right way. On the communication part of it, there's some things there that I don't agree with, but we don't have to get into that. Ray Frazier, who owns Frazier Company, we're very lucky to have their company, probably the best on the North Shore, working on our project. Ray is here himself in case there's a question that comes up that I can't answer. But we had Ray call into Sean because I was traveling, and Ray had left a message, didn't hear back. I called into Sean when I was traveling, and actually he picked up. I talked to him, and he said, yeah, I got Ray's message. I just hadn't had time to get back to him. And so we were under the impression he was going to call Ray because Ray was going to explain a couple things on the site. And then we didn't hear back, and we got the letter to come here, so we just thought it'd be better to come here and take care of things. So if I may approach, I just wanted to give you some pictures. There's two sets if you want.
Sure. Thank you.
4 pictures.
We'll share it.
Thanks.
So these pictures were just taken today. So the silk sacks have been changed again in the last 24 hours. On the sweeping of the street, we hand sweep in front of the different lots when the trucks go in and out a lot. So it's just a little difference of opinion. Maybe they want it swept better. We'll continue to try to do that. But it's not like it was totally ignored. We do a lot of hand sweeping. The silk sacks are changed, as I mentioned, on a regular basis. And when it comes to the erosion control at the bottom of the pile, what Ray wanted to explain is it's frozen solid. And some of the things that we've just done in the last 2 days is because things started to unfreeze a little bit. So that pile that they're talking about, we can't do anything there. And it's not in danger of anything happening because it's frozen solid. So that's checked on a daily basis, and we'll continue to do that because we want to protect the wetlands, we want to protect the woods, we want to do everything the right way as we have been over the last 18 months. So I apologize for any confusion or anything that we might have missed. We'll stay on top of it. And I'll end it there. If there's any questions, and like I said, Ray's here as well in case there's anything technical that I can't handle.
One obvious question is any erosion spoils getting to the wetlands? Is the silt control,
Yeah, the reports have not indicated any breach in erosion control. So the limit of work is stabilized, but it's the internal work. And it sounds like that big frozen soil pile, we do require that our large stockpiles are covered with erosion control.
are there signs of erosion on that pile?
I can't say for sure, but I'm not sure what unfreezes a big pile and
I
when
would
you
bet after that,
determine
like the
that.
rain we had Monday night
Yeah.
and late last week, that messed a week ago
Mhm.
tonight, that there must have been some erosion there. So have you addressed that?
I can have Ray speak on that because he's physically seen it, today.
Put your phone, John. Yeah, my name's Ray Frazier. I'm with the Frazier Company. I'm actually the owner of the company. And the pile that I think that you guys are referencing, this is again why I wanted to talk to Sean about specifically, but I think you're talking about the pile that was excavated out of the foundation hole for Lot 5.
Is that the end of the cul-de-sac on the left?
Yeah.
Yes.
That foundation itself is completely out of the riverfront area, which means it's 200 feet from the riverfront.
Yeah, but understand, the whole subdivision roadway and the condition of that, and the possibility that that could run into the riverfront area. I think it's the overall condition
Right.
of just the job
When
site.
we excavated that foundation hole, there was a problem with the rear walls. The design of it wasn't what it should have been, and they decided to change the design to make the rear walls retaining walls, which means we had to go back in and try to excavate another foot down over an area of like 8 feet wide by 80 feet long to put the retaining walls in lieu of conventional footings. The problem is that couldn't be done after the ground froze with 3 feet of frost. So we were kind of in a catch-22. We excavated that foundation hole. We've purposely put the material on the uphill side up against the Lot 4 foundation as tight as we could. I mean, we're burying the Lot 4 foundation as it is. I don't know how more careful we could have been in that regard. But there's no contamination of any wetland that I can see possible because the slope behind that pile is protected with silt fence. It comes halfway up the slope.
Is there a concern that it could be high enough that it could almost go over that slope? Was it at some point high enough that it could almost breach over that, or?
Well, there's fully functioning silt fence with sock in front of it along the entire area. We stapled the silt fence back up, by the way, in addition to everything else that John was mentioning,
Yeah.
which was something that Scott Cameron had mentioned he wanted to have done.
And what's the plan, what's the rest of the plan for the pile? For now, it just remains where it is?
That's going to be
because
used to
it's frozen
backfill
and-
the foundation after Lot 5 is poured.
And that is planned for,
As soon as the ground thaws enough, we can finish the excavation. Unfortunately, it's going to be there for a little while. But it is frozen solid with 3 feet of frost.
We hope to have that pile gone within the next 30 days if everything goes right. You know, we wish we had weather like the last 2 days for the next, couple weeks, and it'll make it easier.
Right.
But we will keep, we completely understand the concern and respect that, and we will keep a very close eye on that, because we certainly don't want to make our jobs harder to have that erosion, as you mentioned, go as the weather gets warmer. So we'll keep a close eye on that. And the other thing, too, that Ray mentioned, if you see in the pictures, where things have gotten warmer the last 2 days, we were able to, the guys were able to staple up everything and get it back to normal, because they were able to pull out of where it was frozen. So now it's a lot more protected than what it was 24, 48 hours ago. I'm not sure if Sean's been able to see that since we've done that, but I think that will help a lot.
Okay.
I just want to stress to the board that we're not taking this lightly. We totally respect the concern, and we want to stay on top of it.
Okay. Let me just poll the board members to see if they have any specific questions, and then we'll try and figure out what we're going to go doing going forward. So, Mike, do you have any
Well,
questions?
are you Fraser Construction?
Yes.
Oh, I'm going to have to excuse myself. My son works for you.
No, he doesn't.
This
it-
isn't an open hearing,
It's a
Mike.
different Fraser.
Different?
good.
Oh, okay, good. Good, then I'm not excused. All right.
Welcome back.
Well, I accept your explanation that you're doing as much as you can for now, and we just should keep an eye on it, and when it warms up, you'll remove that pile anyway, right?
Yep, that's the plan.
That's all I had.
Okay.
Chelsea?
I guess, do you have anything covering the stockpile right now, like a tarp or anything? Is that
Just snow, ice, and frost.
right? Should we require that or ask them to cover that, or is it not really necessary?
How hard would it be to cover it?
I think it's a
Or
pretty big
tarp
pile.
over it?
Yeah? Huh?
Oh,
It's a big
Is that
pile.
feasible to cover it?
I'm not sure what it would get you. You want to have the sun get on it so it'll melt.
Okay.
Doesn't the
yeah.
snow help pull the frost out of the dirt?
Well, it keeps it from getting any deeper. I don't know if it pulls it out.
It's like my,
Mhm. That was my only concern. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, I understand. I've been dealing with a lot of things being frozen the past couple days, so.
We have a lot of other stockpiles on the site
Okay,
that aren't covered, that we've typically encapsulated with silt fence or sock or what have you.
okay. I thought in the past, like, throwing a tarp over it was standard, but I guess not.
we have required that in the past, but I think in this case, they may be a bit bigger than
Okay,
the smaller, kind of our residential stuff that we've required.
I see. Okay, cool.
What's that?
Yep.
Ian?
As it melts, I'm thinking of my frozen compost pile. And I always check it by stomping on it and see which part moves. Okay, so I don't know if you're gonna go stomping on this pile here.
No.
But to me, putting a cover on it would not help, because it would not help it reduce the moisture and the frozenness.
Well,
in it.
compost is a little bit different because it generates its own
Right,
heat. but
right.
Right?
It's not the
So,
not the same
so I
thing.
don't think, maybe you need a sledgehammer to check that out. But I would think as we warm up, that pile is gonna loosen up for you. I mean, is that what you expect, and that'll?
It's all gravel. I don't think it'll loosen up much.
Okay. It's gravel?
Yeah, it's pretty bony gravel everywhere up there.
Oh, okay, okay, so it's not plant material?
No,
Or
it's not
dirt?
silty, it's not clay, it doesn't have any of that material in it.
Okay, all right, thank you. Just checking.
All set? Vanessa?
Thanks, Peter. So I actually have a question for Georgia. I'm a little unclear on what specifically was in their order of conditions for erosion control for stockpiles, and what exactly is not getting met per the inspector.
That's the great detailed question. So we do have the sweeping mechanically every day. And then, there's a number of them in here that reference either being 100 feet away from the riverfront area, but as Fraser had noted, it is out of the 200 riverfront area, so that may be a situation in which we're just asking you to be clean
Mindful.
and good, in which it sounds like you are, but I think the concern Sean had noted was one, just the height of the pile when he went out there and it not being protected. So to answer that question, there may not, right off the bat, there's not a specific question that says the large stockpiles need to be covered. I'll have to look through this. But noting if it is outside the 200 riverfront area, the commission necessarily can't make him do something with it, but nicely ask that he keep it buttoned up and prevented from erosion. If that pile were to start eroding right and affect something inside the 200 riverfront area, then we can say, hey, you need to get that covered.
Okay, thank
Did
you.
that help answer?
Our biggest problem, our biggest concern is that pile, as I think is Sean's. And we agree with that, and that's why we're keeping an eye on it, every day. We want that pile out of there more than everyone here does. Because that means a foundation would be getting done and backfilled and et cetera. So, the board had asked the previous applicant the length of time to do a project. We thought would be out of this one in about 18 to 20 months. And it's probably going to take us 24 to 25 months because of the weight of materials. We're doing a lot of custom builds up there. So some of the materials you can't order until the framing's done because of the buyers that you're dealing with. So windows, for instance, I'm sure some of you know, we normally could get windows in 3 to 4 weeks max. Now it's taken 8 to 16 weeks, depending on what type of windows. So, it's just kind of a constant delay on things. So it's taking a little bit longer.
All set, Vanessa?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so just to kind of wrap this up. I guess the gist is we want nothing getting to the wetlands. And if some sort of erosion control around these stockpiles, there's got to be some kind of erosion. So is that agreeable with you folks? I mean, are we going to inspect this? How often does Sean go down there to inspect?
Sean goes down there probably 2 times a week, I believe.
Okay, yeah, just have him look to see that, no silt is getting into the wetlands.
Yeah, of course.
And then, if you guys could do something with those stockpiles, and then, how about sweeping the street? Is that one of the order, in the order of conditions?
So it is a requirement at the end of each workday, either by hand or mechanically. Like John had mentioned, it sounds like you're doing outside the front of each lot. But there's
We're doing a lot of hand sweeping.
Okay.
Right, because when I drove through there, I mean, the hill going up, I don't know, if lot 8 is on the left, you go up a bit of a grade to the back of the
Yeah, a little bit of grade to the cul-de-sac.
That was just all mud yesterday. you know, I mean, granted, it's wet, you know, but the snow's pretty much gone, so I think at some point, sweeping shouldn't be that big of a deal. You know, the next few days is supposed to be 50 degrees, so whatever snow is left is gonna be gone, so then, you know, that water source is gone, so hopefully you can get that cleaned up.
Well, we might be getting another storm Sunday, so I hope you
that's-
are right that we're not.
Yeah.
Well, We'll deal with that.
So-
You know what I'm saying? We'd like to see that swept up if we can.
But that's one of the reasons that we've been, you know, really staying on the silt sacks, changing them on a regular basis. So anything that we're missing is not getting, you know.
Right, and that's the bottom line. You know, we can't get to the wetlands. That's, okay, so if that's, if Sean's gonna continue to inspect, that's what we want. I'm not sure the technicalities, but I'm gonna just open it to the public. If anyone has any comments or questions, feel free to ask. Nope? Okay, so are we all set?
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate all the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Comment.
Any other old or new business, Georgia?
No new business. We do have a busy meeting for the next meeting. I think we have about like 6 or 7 items, so I'll forward the memo before then, and that's it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If someone can make a motion to adjourn, we will do so.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you all.